Let's take our audience inside that building then, where Jeremy Corbyn is just being introduced ahead of the launch of his second Labour leadership campaign.
Over the next couple of months, Jeremy's campaign will set out how Labour will defeat the Tories, which is very, very important that this campaign focuses on that. Jeremy stands for fairness, equality, and more importantly, Jeremy's campaign will be about bringing people together. And I'm very proud to be part of that. So without any further ado, I'm going to invite the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, to come to speak to you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming along this morning at relatively short notice here at the Institute of Education. I want to share a few thoughts with you this morning about this leadership campaign and about what we've achieved over the last 10 months. Labour is stronger. We've won every parliamentary by-election we've faced, 3 of them with very significantly increased majorities. We overtook the Tories in the May elections. We won all 4 of the mayoral contests in Liverpool and Salford, in London for the first time since 2004, and in Bristol for the first time ever. We also won Bristol City Council for the first time since 2003. Labour Party membership has gone from below 200,000 a year ago to more than 500,000 today. And as Kate explained, 183,000 supporters have registered in order to be part of this leadership debate. We've welcomed back the Fire Brigades Union into our Labour family. This is a big party. Big party because people have joined, a big party because an awful lot of people are very interested in how Labour is going to present itself for the future and what hopes they can offer to people who've been passed by in our society. And we've delivered some very concrete results for millions of people by our opposition in Parliament to this government's callous welfare policies. 3 million families are over £1,000 better off this year because Labour stood up and opposed cuts to tax credits. That was Labour making a real difference for those at the sharp end, mobilising our supporters and those losing out, lobbying Parliament and challenging the Prime Minister week after week in the Commons and winning votes in the Lords and defeating the government overall in Parliament. We won back billions of pounds for working class families, directly improving the lives of working people and their families, which of course is exactly what the Labour Party was created to do. Just over a year ago, there were those in our party in Parliament who were unsure about whether to oppose the welfare reform bill. That was going to take £12 billion from the DWP budget, cash support for the less well-off, low-paid workers and the disabled. Today, we are very clear. We are proud to defend the tax credits built up by Gordon Brown and proud to defend our greatest creation, social security for all. And we did it again with personal independence payments for those with disabilities in the budget. We shamed the government into abandoning their plans to take £4 billion from disabled people that helps them to live independent lives, live in dignity and decency within our society. That wasn't always the case. It was Labour that brought in the Disability Discrimination Act and so much more, at a time when the government has been giving yet more tax cuts to big business and the very wealthiest. We've helped change the debate on welfare. No front-bench politician is now using disgraceful, divisive terms like scrounger, shirker or skiver. They've been shamed by the reality of life for millions of our people in left-behind Britain. That's laying the ground for a kinder, gentler politics that respects those unable to work, that treats disabled people with dignity. And there's no better advocate for disabled people and those in need than our current Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, Debbie Abrahams, and I thank her for the fantastic work she's done, is doing, and will continue to do. I also want to pay tribute to our Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell. Someone said of him the other day, he does the honest, straight-talking politics, but the kinder, gentler stuff is still work in progress. But what John has done, more effective than any other politician, is demolish the case for austerity. He said, austerity is a political choice, not an economic necessity. Every single plank of George Osborne's failed and destructive economic programme is being torn up. From a year ago, when Labour was too cautious in criticising cuts, now I'm really hard-pressed to find even a Tory to defend it, as one fiscal target after another has been ditched, first by Osborne, now by Theresa May. The long-term economic plan is dead. Yes. Most people now believe the government's cuts are both unfair and bad for our economy. In post-Brexit Britain, even Tories like Stephen Crabb and Sajid Javid are converts, making the case for tens of billions in investment. But it's Labour's Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, who led the way, and who earlier this week made the case for a national investment bank and a network of regional investment banks to redistribute wealth and power. As John said in Sunderland on Monday, we should now work to build a transformed economy where no one is left behind. I came into politics to stand up against injustice. The injustices that scar our society are not those of 1945. The watchwords then were want, squalor, idleness, disease and ignorance. And they've changed since I first entered Parliament in 1983. Today, what is holding people back above all are inequality, neglect, insecurity, prejudice and discrimination. In our campaign, I want to confront all 5 of these ills head on, setting out not only how Labour will campaign against these injustices in opposition, but also spelling out some of the measures the next Labour government will take to overcome them and move decisively towards a society in which opportunity and prosperity are truly shared, in which no individual is held back and no community left behind. Today, I want to set out one way in which the next Labour government will tackle one of these ills, that of discrimination. My first job in the trade unions was with the National Union of Tailors and Garment Workers, now part of the GMB, trying to reclaim unpaid wages, mostly for low-paid women workers in the clothing industry. Companies that conveniently went bust, owing their workers lots of money, and then reopened under a marginally different name a few days later, with apparently no debts and no obligation to anybody. Disgusting and disgraceful behaviour by unscrupulous employers. A few years before I started that role, the Labour government of Harold Wilson had, in its final days, passed the Equal Pay Act in 1970, inspired by the late great Barbara Castle, following an inspirational strike by women sewing machinists at Ford's in Dagenham, a struggle immortalised in the excellent film Made in Dagenham. Those women workers stood up for equal pay, and after 3 weeks on strike, they won a pay rise. Their strike not only educated the workforce at Dagenham, it helped to educate the trade union movement and educate the wider society. And it was a real pleasure to invite some of the women to come and address my shadow cabinet on International Women's Day in March this year to help the education process. What's less well known is that another strike took place 16 years later in 1984, and for 6 weeks this time, for equal pay to actually be achieved. We all know that change can take time, but sometimes the delays cannot and will not be tolerated. Today, we are more than 45 years on from the Equal Pay Act, 40 years on from when I was chasing down lost pay, and still women are paid 20% less than men. As far back as 1951, the Equal Remuneration Convention of the International Labour Organization, a UN body, supported the principle of equal pay for men and women workers for work of equal value. 65 years on, and women are overrepresented in the lowest paying sectors, cleaning, catering and caring, vital sectors to our economy, doing valuable work, but not work that is fairly rewarded or equally respected. And we know too that many disabled workers are not being given the same opportunities to fulfil their potential. Last year, Britain was ranked 18th in the world for its gender pay gap, below Nicaragua, Namibia and New Zealand. We can and must do far better. So Labour is calling time on the waiting game, and I'm making the commitment today that the next Labour government will require all employers to publish equality pay audits, detailing pay, grade and hours of every job alongside data on recognised equality characteristics. Because it's not women alone who face workplace discrimination, but disabled workers, the youngest and oldest workers, black and ethnic minority workers. Young workers are institutionally discriminated against, not entitled to the full minimum wage, not entitled to equal rates of housing benefit, and so many are now saddled with huge student debts, often of £50,000 and more. I want to pay tribute to our trade unions. They've won millions of pounds in equal pay claims for workers who face discrimination. They won them back pay, and they also won them dignity and equality. But not every workplace is unionised, and there are often complex cases that can take years. We're calling time on discrimination, and as we know from the minimum wage, proper enforcement matters and makes the difference. So we're also committing to fund the Equalities and Human Rights Commission. Fund it properly to deal with all aspects of inequality, injustice and discrimination in our society. To monitor employers' equality pay audits, to take action where required to eradicate discrimination, and to fine employers that do not provide them. Many employers wouldn't want to discriminate against their staff. Such discrimination holds back companies and indeed our whole economy. If our economy is to thrive, it needs to harness the talents of everyone. So that is about making our economy stronger, the workplace fairer, and reducing the discrimination that holds people back. Our labour movement is about improving people's lives, about ending injustices, about giving power to the powerless, and building a society in which opportunity and wealth is shared. Over the next couple of months, we'll be setting out new policies each week on different aspects of our society, on human rights, on environment, on transport, on housing, many, many other issues. Because our campaign will set out how we plan to defeat the Tories and elect a Labour government that will act to tame the forces holding people back of inequality, neglect, insecurity, prejudice and discrimination. And to build a society in which no one and no community is left behind, because the problems facing this country at the moment are inequality, are injustice, are whole communities where industries have closed, they haven't been replaced, infrastructure investment hasn't taken place, and there is deep division. It cannot be right that some parts of Britain you earn more than other parts of Britain. It cannot be right that this degree of inequality goes on. That is the mission we're going to be putting forward in this leadership campaign, and that is the campaign that we're going to put forward to set out how we, the Labour Party, will be stronger, even stronger, and hopefully even bigger at the end of this campaign, and that we will defeat the Tories at the next general election. Build that society. That's our pledge, that's our promise, and that's what's so exciting about this leadership campaign. Thank you very much.